They say money can't buy happiness. I used to believe that. Then my wife proved me wrong. Not by buying happiness, but by trying to buy freedom. She said she needed time to find herself. I gave her $300,000 to do it, everything we'd saved for retirement. But what she found wasn't peace or purpose. It was another man. My name's Mark. I'm 57 years old. And this is how losing my wife and my money became the best thing that ever happened to me. Before I tell you how it all fell apart, hit that subscribe button, because some stories don't end in revenge. They end in revelation. You don't notice when a marriage starts breaking. It doesn't snap, it frays. A comment here, a quiet there. You stop laughing at the same jokes, stop eating at the same table, stop planning next summer because this one already feels wrong. Elaine and I had been married for 26 years. We built a life that from the outside looked solid. A paid-off house, 2 grown kids, a steady rhythm. I was a project manager for a construction company. She ran a small interior design business from home. I met her in my 20s. She was all energy and charm, the kind of woman who could make a room brighter just by talking. Back then I thought her restlessness was ambition. Turns out it was something else. When our kids moved out, the silence in the house didn't bring us closer. It just made space for distance. We still had dinner together, still said goodnight, but our conversations had become weather reports. Polite, predictable, forgettable. It started small. She began spending weekends on retreats, things like yoga or self-discovery workshops. I didn't question it. After all, she'd spent years raising kids, managing clients, and putting up with me. She deserved some time, but then one night she sat across from me at the table and said, "Mark, I need to do something for myself. Something bigger." Her voice trembled, but her eyes didn't. She told me about a women's journey program, some spiritual thing overseas. Bali. 3 months. Workshops, meditation, travel. I didn't love the idea. I told her, "That sounds expensive." She smiled faintly and said, "It's an investment in who I am." Those words stuck with me. An investment in who I am. I should have known then. She asked for $300,000. She said it would cover travel, accommodation, and a year of peace. I hesitated, but she wrapped her hands around mine and whispered, "I've supported your dreams all these years. Please, just let me find myself now." What do you say to that? When you've built a life on love and trust, you don't expect deceit to wear the same face as honesty. So I transferred the money. It was most of what I had saved after 30 years of work. She left 3 weeks later. She cried at the airport. I believed her. She called twice from Bali, said it was beautiful, that she was learning to breathe again. After that, her calls slowed, then stopped. I tried not to panic. Told myself maybe she was just busy or disconnected, but something inside me started whispering a truth I didn't want to hear. 2 months in, a message from my daughter changed everything. She sent me a photo, a social media post of Elaine tagged by someone else. She wasn't at a retreat. She was on a yacht, laughing, champagne in hand, with a man I didn't recognize. The caption read, "Freedom looks good on her." I stared at that photo for hours. At first I wanted to believe it was old, a coincidence, anything. But the timestamp said 2 days ago. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table, lights off, staring at the dark reflection in the window. You think heartbreak comes with noise, shouting, breaking things, rage. But mine came with silence. Just a dull ache that sat in my chest like a weight I couldn't lift. For the first time I realized the truth. I didn't lose my wife to another man. I lost her to herself. Over the next week, I started going through our accounts. Every transaction, every wire transfer. That's when I saw it. The money wasn't just spent. It was moved. Half of it went to a new joint account under her name and someone named David Lawson. That was my answer. I didn't call her. Didn't message. Didn't shout. Instead, I printed the statements, placed them in a folder, and locked them in my desk. Then I made myself a promise. If she ever came back, I'd be ready. Not with anger, but with clarity. The hardest part wasn't losing the money. It was losing the story of who I thought we were. In the months that followed, I went quiet. Friends asked where Elaine was. I said she was traveling. Coworkers joked about me being temporarily single. I laughed with them. But every night, when I got home, I felt that echo of her absence, like a melody missing its final note. One day, I went to cancel her phone line. The clerk handed me her call history before shutting it down. Her last few calls weren't to me or to our kids. They were to a number in the same city I lived in. She wasn't overseas anymore. That night, for the first time, I didn't feel sad. I felt steady. I realized something. If she could lie so calmly, I could live even calmer. I didn't need to expose her. I just needed to rebuild a life she'd never have access to again. So I started planning, not revenge, but renewal. I withdrew the rest of my savings from our joint account. I transferred the house into my name alone. She'd signed it years ago as part of a tax deal. I updated my will, my accounts, everything. Then I booked a meeting with a lawyer, not to sue her, but to ensure that every penny she thought she'd get from me was legally untouchable. It was the first time in months I felt in control. 2 months later, she called. Her voice sounded tired, maybe even guilty. She said, "Mark, I'm back in town. Can we talk?" I said yes, not because I wanted to hear her, but because I wanted her to see what peace looked like without her in it. We met at a small cafe near the river. She looked different, more polished, but somehow emptier. The kind of beauty that comes from money but not meaning. She said, "I made mistakes." I said, "You made choices." She looked down. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I smiled gently. "You just didn't care if you did." Silence. Then she said, "Can we start over?" I leaned back, thought about the years, the trust, the $300,000 that became her passport to finding herself. And I said, "You already did. You found yourself. Now you live with her." She didn't reply. She just nodded, eyes wet, and walked away. When I got home that night, I poured a glass of whiskey and stood on the porch. The air felt lighter. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about reclaiming something she'd forgotten. My dignity. That night I realized something else. You can't buy freedom with stolen love. It always comes due. The weeks after seeing her again moved slower than winter mornings. Every corner of the house still held her echo, but the sound had changed. Less like a wound, more like a ghost I'd finally learned to live with. I started fixing the place up, not to forget her, but to remind myself it was still mine. Paint, polish, silence. Work kept me steady. I took a small contract job managing a renovation site for a friend. The noise of drills and saws drowned out the thoughts that used to circle my head. In the evenings, I'd drive home tired, put on old blues records, and cook for one without feeling sorry about it. A year went by before I realized I hadn't checked her social media in months. Curiosity came one night like an itch. I typed her name into the search bar. Her page looked different, fewer smiles, fewer sunsets. The man from the yacht wasn't in the pictures anymore. There were long captions about starting again, learning humility, new beginnings. It read less like pride and more like apology. I shut the laptop. People show what they want you to see. I didn't need to know more. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Not from her, this time it was from the bank. An account I hadn't used in years showed recent activity. Small deposits, a few $100s at a time, each labeled repayment. No sender's name, but I knew. For days I wondered if I should respond, tell her to stop, that I didn't need it. But some part of me understood. Maybe this was how she said sorry. Quietly, in installments. Spring came early that year. One afternoon, while I was at the job site, a young reporter showed up asking questions about a business deal. "Do you know an Elaine Carver?" she asked. "There's a civil case, fraud, investment misrepresentation. We're tracing the money." I felt my stomach tighten. I told her I hadn't spoken to Elaine in a long time. She nodded, left a card, and walked off into the noise of the street. That night I sat on the porch again, the air heavy with the smell of rain. I thought about the deposits, the posts, the reporter, pieces of a puzzle I didn't want but suddenly couldn't ignore. Maybe she wasn't running anymore. Maybe she was being chased. I didn't plan to get involved, but I knew the next call, letter, or knock could drag the past back to my door. Still, I slept better than I had in years, because for the first time the storm wasn't inside me. It was somewhere else, far enough away that I could simply watch the clouds gather and know I didn't have to stand in the rain. The reporter's card sat on my kitchen table for 3 days before I called. When she answered, I could hear a newsroom humming behind her. "Mr. Carver? This is Lydia Mann. I'm following a story about an investment group called Sun Harbor Equities. Your ex-wife's name came up in court filings." The name meant nothing to me then, but by the end of the week it would explain everything. Lydia asked if I'd meet her downtown. We sat in a corner booth of a small cafe that smelled of burnt espresso and wet coats. She opened a file thick with printed statements and highlighted pages. "Elaine Carver was listed as a silent partner," she said, sliding one sheet toward me. "Initial contribution, $300,000. There it was. My handwriting on the wire authorization, my signature blurred by the copy. I remembered that day, the transfer I made when she told me it was for a retreat fund. I hadn't realized she'd already moved the money again before the bank even processed it. Lydia explained that Sun Harbor wasn't a real investment group. It was a front run by a man named Daniel Voss, who promised quick returns from offshore property deals. When the market tightened, the investors' money evaporated, and Daniel disappeared. Elaine, listed as his associate, was now being subpoenaed. I felt the old anger stir, but it didn't flare the way it used to. It just hummed quietly under my ribs. "Is she in trouble?" I asked. "She might be cooperating," Lydia said. "But there's still a missing ledger, one that tracks where some of the money went after Sun Harbor folded." That ledger became my obsession. Not because of revenge, but because I wanted to know how far my name, my trust, had traveled. Over the next month, I helped Lydia trace transfers through public records. One account in the Caymans, another in Delaware. Each line of numbers told a story: a luxury rental, a boutique opening, a failed loan. Elaine's name kept showing up beside Daniel's, sometimes as consultant, sometimes guarantor. Then came the email. No subject line, no signature, just a single sentence. I didn't know what he planned. "Please don't let them paint me as part of it." It came from an encrypted address, but the phrasing was hers, soft, apologetic, the way she'd write when she broke something in the house. For a moment I almost answered. Instead, I forwarded it to Lydia. 2 weeks later, Lydia called again. "We found the ledger," she said. "And something else. You should see this in person." At her office, she laid out a folder marked Evidence Exhibit 14. Inside was a check stub, $50,000, made out to M. Carver Holdings. I blinked. "That's me," I said. "But I never—" "It's forged," she interrupted gently. "He used your name to open a shell account. Looks like Elaine signed off on it." The room tilted. Not from shock, but from recognition. This was what trust looks like when it's twisted. Familiar signatures on things you never touched. Lydia said the investigators might contact me. I nodded, thanked her, and walked out into the late afternoon light. Across the street, people hurried past, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers. For the first time, I didn't feel part of that crowd. I was watching from a distance, detached, free. That night, I went through the old photo boxes, wedding, vacations, the life before the wire transfer. I didn't burn them. I just packed them away properly, label by label, like closing the file on a finished case. 3 days later, a courier delivered an envelope to my door. No return address. Inside, 1 page of a ledger photocopy and a handwritten note. I told them everything. It's over. But it wasn't over. At the bottom of the ledger page, under Daniel Voss's signature, was another name, scribbled, half erased. Someone neither Lydia nor the court had mentioned. And the final transfer, dated months after the company collapsed, led not offshore but somewhere much closer, an address in my own city. I folded the paper slowly, slipped it back into the envelope, and set it on the table beside Lydia's card. Whatever truth waited there, I wasn't running from it anymore. Because sometimes closure isn't peace, it's knowing exactly how the story ends and choosing when to read the last line. I didn't rush to the address on the ledger. It sat folded in my wallet for 3 days while I tried to decide what I actually wanted. Justice, answers, or just peace. On the 4th morning, I drove there anyway. The street was ordinary, narrow trees, mailboxes leaning with age, houses that hadn't seen a coat of paint in years. Number 118 wasn't a mansion or an office. It was a small brick storefront with a faded sign that once read, Harbor Wellness Center. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and lavender. A woman at the desk looked up. "Can I help you?" I gave her my name. She hesitated, then nodded toward a back office. Elaine was there. Different hair, different clothes, but still unmistakably her. The first thing I noticed wasn't guilt or fear. It was exhaustion. "Mark," she said quietly, "you shouldn't be here." I didn't answer right away. I took in the room instead. File boxes, unopened mail, a half-finished cup of tea. "You used my name on a forged account," I said finally. "Why?" She folded her arms as if bracing herself. "Daniel said it was temporary. He promised investors would be repaid in weeks. When everything collapsed, he disappeared. I've been paying back what I can. I thought about the small deposits in my old account, the quiet installments of apology. Why this place?" I asked. "It was supposed to be a recovery clinic," she said. "Something good built from something awful. But the debts keep swallowing it." She slid a single folder across the desk. Inside were receipts, statements, a letter to the court. At the bottom was a transfer, $10,000, to a name I didn't recognize, L. Voss. "Daniel's sister," she said. "He sent her the last of the money before he vanished. She lives here now." Her eyes lifted. "That's the piece no one's found yet." We sat in silence for a long time. Rain ticked against the window. Finally I said, "The reporter will ask again. Tell her the truth. All of it." Elaine nodded. I already did. I left the folder on her desk and walked out into the drizzle. When I reached the car, I didn't start it right away. I looked back through the windshield. She was standing in the doorway watching, maybe waiting for something I no longer owed. That night, Lydia called. They closed the case, she said. Most investors will recover some money. Daniel Voss is still missing. Then she hesitated. But there's a rumor. Someone matching his description bought property overseas using the initials LV. I didn't tell her about the name on the transfer. Some truths earn their own silence. A week later, another envelope arrived. Inside, no note this time, only a cashier's check for the last of the missing amount. The handwriting on the remittance line wasn't Elaine's. I placed it with the others, unopened. The money didn't matter anymore. The quiet did. Sometimes I still drive past that brick building. The lights are on less often now, but the sign has been repainted, just the word harbor left in fresh blue letters. I like to think she's still trying to make something good from what went wrong. As for Daniel, or whoever's behind those initials, maybe he's still out there, starting over under a new name. Maybe that's the part of the story none of us get to finish. If you followed this story to the end, like to support it, comment your theory about who LV really is and subscribe so you're here when the next true life mystery drops.